Welcome to the Chapter 49 podcast. The day is the last day of September, September 30th, 2021, which, by the way, is the end of the federal fiscal year. So it's New Year's Eve for people who celebrate the start of the new fiscal year. Not much to celebrate this year because Duncan and I will be talking about why that date is important tomorrow, being October 1st. So again, we're recording this on September 30th, final day of the fiscal year. New one starts next year, and we'll have more to say about that. And we would like to once again welcome our chapter president for Chapter 49, Duncan Giles, who is now the father of the bride.
Thanks, Larry. Good to be here. And yep, I had that honor almost 2 weeks ago. Now, walking her down the aisle.
Watched you walk your daughter down the aisle. I've done that twice. It's quite an important event, and you had you and your daughter's mother put on a great party. It was nice. Enjoyed it very much. And got to see some people I hadn't seen for a while. So for Jane and I, it was a really great experience, and we appreciate being asked to be a part of it. Also, you may recall we did not have a podcast last week, and the reason for that is Jane and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary back on May 11th. Now, when we were first married 30 years ago, after the wedding ceremony, we went off to Las Vegas for a couple of weeks. We wanted to go back for our 30th wedding anniversary. Problem was, back in May, Vegas was still more or less shut down. So we thought, well, we'll put it off. So we went last week. That was the official end of our 30th wedding anniversary celebration, I guess. So thanks for dealing, just being patient with that. We had no podcast last week. I did manage to get myself injured while I was out there, injured my knee, which, being the clumsy person that I am, is not a big surprise. It was just bad coming back because we had connecting flights. It was difficult to get a direct flight. And running through an airport when you can't hardly walk to begin with, that's poor English, but it's difficult to walk to begin with. That's never easy for a guy my age. So we'll move on from all the personal stuff and talk about the most important thing. As I mentioned earlier, this is the day we record this, September 30th of 2021, is the final day of the fiscal year. The new fiscal year begins on October 1st. Which means a new budget must be in place. As we record this, there is no budget in place. There is no continuing resolution in place. We have been promised that there is a deal in the Senate and that the House will go along with it. And as we record this, the vote was supposed to have been this morning. We're in afternoon. To my knowledge, at the time we record this, that vote in the Senate has still not happened. Duncan, I knew some people who actually covered the Senate as reporters, and they told me there are really two different kinds of time there. There's the time that you and I use, then there's Senate time. So the Senate time is we're going to have the vote in the morning. Well, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we still haven't had the vote. They're in a committee hearing. They'll say, we'll take a 5-minute recess. They'll be back 2 hours later. That's Senate time. So I guess we're dealing with Senate time at the moment.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I do think it will get done today. I'm hearing the same things that you are, that there is a deal in place, that they have the main point of contention has been the debt ceiling that was intertwined with the continuing resolution. They've pulled it out to make it what's called a clean continuing resolution. So we've been told that should pass the Senate. The House should pass it as well. Then it would go to the president. So if there is a shutdown, it would be in the wee small hours of the morning for just a short period of time. So it should not really impact us at all.
So we're hopeful that everyone will be able to show up for work on Friday at the regular time, whether you're working at home or in the office. At least that's the idea for the moment, and we hope that is the case. We'll keep an eye on it. And again, for the latest updates, go ahead and go to our Facebook page. You can follow it or you can like it. Either way, you will get updates on your Facebook news feed. Just find us by going on Facebook and searching under NTEU Chapter 49 Indiana, and you should be able to like or follow our page and you will be able to get the updates that we send out on a regular basis. So just go directly to that Facebook page and you'll see all the latest posts that we have made. And that's one way we try to get in touch with people immediately, so you get information as quickly as possible. So as we speak, at roughly 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time on September 30th, a Thursday, the promise is there is a deal, and the Senate is poised to vote as we speak, promised to vote. I always tell the story of a time when I was working in toll free, and at that point, toll free was part of the media relations outfit. And so I'd been a reporter at one time. The media relations persons were all out on leave that day. They asked me to walk in just and write some news releases for them. I said, okay, I can do that. Unexpectedly, the government shut down. And this is before they had these special rules. Any senator could stop it. Some senator from New York got up and was upset about a military base closing in his district or his state, and just got up and just wouldn't stop talking. And all of a sudden it's like, we're going to have an unexpected government shutdown. And ended up right in the middle of that thing. Every media outlet in town was calling me. So I had to go back to my old reporter mode and try to figure out how to help all these people. But that was quite an experience. Finally got some help as the day went on. But the rules have changed. One senator can no longer do that.
Right.
That is why the rule was changed, by the way. Yeah. At least when a shutdown's going to come, and it came so unexpectedly, everybody just had to leave all of a sudden, and that is not a good way to handle it. So we are hopeful, and we'll keep you posted as best we can. There is another issue that's looming, and as best we can tell from the latest information we have from the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, the date she's looking at now is October 18th for the debt ceiling to be reached. It's never a clear number or day or time, because things fluctuate financially so much. It could be a little earlier than that. It could be a little later than that. But the general date that will be hit is right around October 18th. Last time we talked about that, there hadn't been much talk in Washington about the debt ceiling. Well, since we've last talked, there's been a lot of talk about it. And one group of politicians have basically said in the Senate, we're not voting for a debt limit raise, which brings a possible crisis looming. So government shutdown, we've been through those before. We understand how they work, whether we don't like them, but we at least understand them. A debt limit ceiling that is reached and not raised, or at least suspended, we have never had to do that. And what impact it will have on us, how quickly, and who would work and who wouldn't. To be frank about it, Duncan, nobody knows the answers to those questions.
Yeah, all we do know is it's scary and it's all bad. There is no good outcome with us hitting the debt ceiling without raising it. Because once and the stock markets already earlier this week and again today are still a little bit nervous about this, because they, haven't heard the talk that it's going to get taken care of. Things like, not only would employees possibly not get paid, troops might not get paid, Social Security checks might not go out, Medicare might not get taken care of. All these things could be possibly listed. Then you're talking about the full faith and credit of the United States not being trustworthy. And that's the bedrock where the vast majority of the financial markets in the planet depend on. And if you can't depend on the US to take care of its obligations, then we're all screwed. So it's something that's beyond me to why to play chicken for this. And to hear politicians say, we don't want to do this because we don't believe in some of the things that are being brought up that we want to pay for. The debt ceiling has nothing to do with that. The debt ceiling is for debts the government has already incurred. It's sort of like saying, yeah, I'm not going to participate because I don't like this new house that my significant other's looking at. No, we're talking about paying the mortgage on the house you're already in. That's what we're talking about. And so to hear him say things of that nature is just strikes me as extremely disingenuous at best.
I think disingenuous is the most kind way to describe this. You're exactly right. This is paying the bills we've already incurred. And if you want to make it a political party thing, both parties have done this. And the idea that we're not paying bills, but that sometimes a president of your own party is incurred. So I think and I'll tell you something that's interesting, and I don't want to sound partisan on this. I don't know if you remember this, but when Barack Obama was a new senator from Illinois, he voted against raising the debt limit once.
Yep.
And lived to regret it. That was a bad vote. And he admitted that it was a bad vote, but it took him a while to figure out that he should never have done that. Both parties have kind of played with this debt ceiling thing. And other countries, Duncan, cannot understand why we even have a debt ceiling. I tried to look into this one time, and the best explanation I could find is that the debt ceiling was put into place as we entered World War I, because there were some people in Congress who were skittish about incurring the debt that we would have to go into for World War I. So in order to get their votes, they promised to put this debt limit in. And it's been there ever since. And there are bills in Congress to just do away with the debt limit. I think that might be the best way to handle this.
I would think so, because my research has shown the same thing from World War I. The other thing is to mint a $1 trillion coin and then, use it to pay off the debt. And it's like, there doesn't need to be a debt ceiling. The United States has been off the gold standard for quite a few years. This isn't rocket science. This is something that, this is part of our way of doing business. And so we just need to make sure that we're continuing to take care of the bills that we've incurred, plain, pure, and simple.
So we're watching this, and hopefully we'll be back next week with a podcast, and we'll be on our Facebook page. And Duncan at times will communicate directly with people who are members of NTEU through his email system. Bless you, Duncan. My goodness. Yes. Take it easy, bud. The weather is changing, It's staying warm around here. This is the time of year when all that's in the air. Let's move on to vaccinations. Interesting that we've had more pressing subjects than vaccinations. That's been our main topic for a long time. It's not gone. We're still waiting as a union for the federal government, particularly the Safer Workforce Group in the White House, to come out with some clear guidance on how you ask for a reasonable accommodation from the vaccine mandate. And it has not been forthcoming. All we really have at the moment are the general guidelines for medical and sincere religious belief being reasonable accommodation areas. And those guidance points were put together at a time far before COVID was an issue. So we can only go so far with that. We have been recommending as a union for people to wait until we have clear guidance on how you would go about asking for a reasonable accommodation if you do not wish to be vaccinated and there's a vaccination mandate in place. So is there anything more we can tell people at this point?
I just tell people, get your documentation together. For those who are doing a medical, who say that they cannot take the vaccine due to their medical condition, make sure that your medical professional has a signed statement stating exactly that. Be prepared to be asked for permission for the folks at Federal Occupational Health or whoever IRS contracts with this to be able to check to make sure that this is accurate. You don't have to do that, but then again, they could say, well, if you don't do that, then we're not going to accept the accommodation. And that goes through the regular accommodation process. With the religious accommodation, that's going to go through the Office of Equity, Diversity, EDI, and they're not ready yet. I don't know if they'll ever be ready for it's going to be like a tsunami, I believe, for them. But If you have a sincerely held belief that you can't have the vaccination, then you're going to need the documentation for that. And that's going to be a letter, a signed letter, in great specificity from someone from your faith, a leader in your faith, stating exactly why you can't get this vaccination. I can tell you, if your kids are vaccinated for school, you're going to have a tough time saying this one's not okay. This vaccination's not okay. Then there are going to be people who just don't want to take the vaccination. Period. I understand that. I get it. It's a personal choice. I'm not telling you you have to be vaccinated. I am not telling you that. I am telling you that if you're not vaccinated, it is very, very possible that you'll end up losing your job because it has been mandated from the executive branch, for the executive branch, by the President of the United States. So, everybody's got to make choices in life. And that's what it boils down to. So have your documentation ready if you're claiming an exemption for medical or religious. And if you're not claiming an exemption for either one of those, but you just don't believe in it, I'm just here to tell you that, I hope you're looking for another job, because it will end up being that at the bottom line.
Well, we need to once again remind people that with medical, that's a pretty clear-cut case. Either you have a medical exemption or you don't, and that has to go through a process that you've already described. But the sincerely held religious belief, there's a lower standard for the management to grant a reasonable accommodation. So we need to remind people, even if it is determined that you have a sincerely held religious belief against vaccination, and that is in fact determined, that reasonable accommodation may or may not be something that would be acceptable to you, but that's all that you're going to get. And the courts have more or less the courts are behind those sorts of low-level reasonable accommodations. So we just have to give people fair warning on that.
Exactly so. And that's what we're trying to do, is just make people aware. When you hear the term reasonable accommodation, that means it's reasonable for the government to want to, to be able to grant whatever relief that they're looking at. And if the government determines it's not reasonable, they're not going to grant it. So even though you may think it's reasonable, or I may think it's reasonable, if the government says it's not, as you said, the courts back the government up. So it's going to be an extremely tough thing to get that. And if you don't have it, then you're looking at that alternative of either getting the vaccination or eventually going through the disciplinary process.
And as more information becomes available, we will put it on Facebook. You will be sharing it with the people who are members of NTEU. And we will once again discuss it on this podcast when we have more to say. We don't have a whole lot of good news anymore, but we do have one. Bless you again. That's the caregiver leave. We thought that was expired, but now we received word that it's going to be extended. Would you tell us more about the caregiver leave? First of all, how it works and what you know about this extension?
Yeah, this came about very quickly, I believe. The caregiver leave is for those who have small children, school age, that they're taking care of while they're teleworking, and trying to take care of those folks while they're doing their job. Well, it had been up to 20 hours per pay period that folks were able to use this. It was set to expire today. And then, sometime after 4:30 yesterday, they came out and said, okay, we're extending the Caregiver Act through December 31st, or until the evacuation order is lifted, whichever comes first. And it's down to 16 hours per pay period.
So we do have some good news that was extended, and you had no idea that it would be extended. In fact,
No.
Under the impression it would not be extended, and boom, we have some good news here. So how can people find out more about this if they want to take advantage of this extended benefit?
If they haven't been using it before and want to use it, the information is on the IR source, or they can contact their union office. and we'll be happy to give them information on it.
Well, we talked about the beginning of the new fiscal year on October 1st. We are recording this the day before October 1st, but yet something else happens on October 1st, and that would be the first day the brand new national agreement goes into effect. We've talked about this countless times, but since we're on the precipice, and by the time people hear this podcast, it may well already be in place and in effect. Just a quick reminder of what benefits employees will have as of the implementation of this new contract.
Yeah, there are several different things that we got in. Um, One is a child care subsidy. Our chief spokesperson, Ken Moffat, who's been a guest on our show, came up with this and really pushed it, and very, very happy that this was included. That IRS also saw the benefit to this, that if you have a total family income of $70,000 or less, you may qualify for some of your child care to be paid for, which I think is a great boon for folks in that type of situation. We're expanding the not only the distance you can be for teleworking, but there's also a couple of pay periods where you don't even have to, the distance will be waived. So if your, family's in the mountains somewhere and you're, several thousand miles away from your post of duty, but you've got your work computer because you do want to do some work because your in-laws are driving you crazy, you absolutely will have the availability to do that, some of it to, so you won't have to use up all your leave. There are several different things like that that are in this agreement. It's a very, very good agreement for employees, and I think it'll work well for management as well.
So that's as of October 1st. If you have questions, Duncan is a great resource. Not only is he a chapter president, he was involved in the negotiations from beginning to end and can not only show you what the language is, but can explain what's behind it. So he's a great source for that. I want to talk about something else that just happened, I think the day before we recorded this. That's been the announcement of the federal employee health benefit program rates for 2022. We'll have more to say about this later because open season begins, I believe, in November. NTEU at the national level always provides members with a guide for how you can shop around for the best FEHB plan that you may want. There are two groups of plans you would want. Now, one would be on the national level, the Blue Cross plan, GEHA. There's several of them that are national in scope. Anybody in the nation can sign up for these. Then there's a whole other listing of the local or regional plans that may be available depending on where you live. We provided links to both of those on our Facebook page. We've had an awful lot of people access that, and that's good to see. So we know we'll be doing more in depth on this later, but any general thoughts about those rates as they were announced as they stand right now, Duncan?
Yeah, it's almost like damning with faint praise. They went up, but they didn't go up as much as we feared they might go up. So that's always a good thing. And as you said, we'll get into this in a later podcast, but I strongly urge folks to shop around and not go with the one name plan that they always have. Talk to your doctor's offices, find out what insurance coverages that they accept. Because a few years ago, I made a switch and I save a substantial amount of money per year and still get the exact same coverage for my medical. So I think it's something that it absolutely behooves people to take a look at that consumer checkbook that you referenced that NTU has on their website that'll be up closer to open season time. Will be a great benefit. And like I said, I think we'll be doing something on a podcast that'll go further in depth to also try and help folks make the best choice for them and their family.
Well, one thing we were unable to talk about, because we were gone last week, and we are now at the end of that. We are at the end of Labor Recognition Week. It ends on October 1st. So unfortunately, we can't get into a lot of detail as far as previewing what would happen. But Labor Recognition Week is something that NTEU has been doing for a number of years, and just recognizing um, the importance of labor unions in the lives of people, NTEU and its involvement in the lives of people and the agencies it represents, including the IRS. Maybe a few words from you on Labor Recognition Week.
Yeah, this is one of those things where we like to celebrate it. You know, and unfortunately, because everybody's working from home, well, actually, fortunate that we're being safe, but unfortunately for any gatherings or celebrations, it's tough to do. It's tough to share popcorn or pizza when nobody's in the actual building. So I just want everybody to know how much your work is appreciated. Especially the last year and a half has been an extremely trying time. And the folks at the IRS, um, from the campuses to LB&I and everything in between, have just done an outstanding job in damn near impossible circumstances. And NTU has been there right along with you, trying to make sure that you have the easiest way of doing your job possible. So I just want to say thank you to everybody out there for the great job that you're doing.
And Labor Recognition Week is not just for labor unions themselves. It's exactly what you said. It's for the people doing the work,
Mhm.
who are laboring every day, working hard. IRS has tons of people who come into work every day, or are entering into work from their homes. They're getting this work done. It's amazing how much work we get done. Although we're certainly behind in many ways, it has nothing to do with the people doing the work. It had to do with COVID, it had to do with the pandemic and other issues that were not related to the people on the ground floor. So we want to recognize each and one of you listening to this podcast, doing the work day in and day out. You're the ones that really deserve the recognition, if I may say that. And that, I think, just extends what you were talking about. One last thing I want to bring up. Jim Bailey is the executive vice president nationally for NTEU, which means he's the number 2 person in the entire union structure underneath only our national president. Jim Bailey has been a guest on this podcast twice. I think the last time he was here, he gave one of the best rundowns I'd ever heard in terms of the contract, vaccinations, number of issues that we discussed. And I think he, as an attorney, was able to explain in as clear terms as I'd ever heard. But we got some news about Jim Bailey recently. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it looks like Jim Bailey's past has finally caught up with him and he's running. Um, Actually, what Jim has decided to do is at the end of the year, he is going to be retiring. In seriousness, this is a huge blow for NTEU. I am extremely happy for Jim personally and his family. He has got a wonderful family. And I think that they, just want to spend more time back in their home state of Colorado. And so he's decided after, 35 years of working with NTU, and I can't tell you how much I admire this man, not just for his knowledge, but for the way he's able to impart it, to bring it down to anybody's level. Just a very, very sharp man, very empathetic, has always had employees' needs and wants in the forefront of his mind and has always worked towards that. I've known him for decades and I'm very happy for him personally, but I am going to be very sad at the end of the year to lose him, his experience, his knowledge, things of that nature, because he is just a great resource for NTEU.
Well, my dealings with Jim have been on this podcast, and he does have a special talent for taking very complex subjects and concisely explaining it. So that is a very special talent. We've had guests on here who have talked, and sometimes it's difficult to put into simple words a complex area you're dealing with. Jim had that ability, and I've always appreciated that. Wish him well in his retirement. And just so people know, there will be a special election, and this election is of chapter leaders. Am I correct on that?
That would be correct. Yeah. Yeah, basically the delegated voters for each chapter. So for chapter 49, it would be myself. There will be ballots, going out asking for nominations. I do believe that Tony has someone in mind that he would like to select. And if it is that person, that would make me very happy because I think that person is very qualified, but I don't know for sure. I know one thing, and I've gotten a couple of phone calls, and I can tell you, it's not me. It won't be me. That's not happening.
So somebody actually tried to convince you to run for executive vice president.
There were a couple there. I have had a couple of phone calls and a couple of emails that are, are you running? Are you putting your name in? We think you'd be good. And I had to tell each of those folks that I think that they need to go to the clinic immediately and start, tapering off. Maybe a little methadone might help because the drugs they're on are too powerful.
Well, Duncan, just to be blunt about it, I don't see you as somebody moving kit and caboodle to Washington, D.C. I just don't see that.
That would not be it. And those that know me well. It's just, it wouldn't be the right fit for me. But I can't tell you how happy I am with the job I've got. So I'm good, and I'm good.
Well said there, Duncan. Final comment before we kept this pretty close to 30 minutes. We had lots of issues to deal with. Any quick final comment before we wrap this up?
Yeah, again, I'm always going to ask folks, if you haven't been vaccinated, and I know the majority of you have. I've seen some of the statistics. The majority of IRS employees out there have been vaccinated. I would urge you to please, please, please start the vaccination process. Not just for, now it's not just for your health, the health of those around you and your family. Now it's going to be affecting your job as well. So please, the vaccine is safe. The vaccine is something that saves lives. Please, please, please consider getting it.
And that's Duncan Giles, chapter president for NTEU chapter 49. And this wraps up another chapter 49 podcast. Again, you can find our podcast just about anywhere you find podcasts. Just search under podcasts by Larry Lannan, Lannan, and you can find all my podcasts. I produce several, but the chapter 49 podcast will be found there. Duncan has his own YouTube channel. Just go to Duncan Giles and subscribe to his channel, and you will be able to see all of our YouTube videos on these podcasts. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. Please be safe and be kind.